days when there was no king. Every man did what was right in his own eyes, but God raised up deliverers.
You know, great thing about berry bushes is the berries. Blueberries are nice in that, unlike blackberries, a lot of times there's not thorns, right? With blackberries, you go to Oregon, there's blackberry bushes all over the place. In Portland area, lots of thorns though. So that's a downside. But anyways, today we're talking about Abimelech, who was the son of Gideon. So last time we talked about this great judge, Gideon, who saved God's people. Remember this cycle. God's people are evil. They're given over to their enemies. They cry out. God sends a judge. That judge is eventually rejected. Well, here we're going to see a perfect example of that rejection. So Abimelech himself was not a judge, though. So this time we've been talking about judges, right? We've been talking about Othniel, Ehud, Barak, Gideon, and now we're talking about Abimelech, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of a different start, right? Because he's not what we're used to seeing. He's not a judge. You could call him a false judge, honestly. He doesn't follow the pattern or the criteria for a judge, right? We're not seeing the same exact cycle. He's not called by God. The Spirit of God does not come upon him. None of the things that we might expect from a judge happen. He doesn't even save God's people. He doesn't judge their enemies. Actually, we see him kind of as a, you might say, an anti-Christ figure. The judges are Christ figures, and he's an anti-Christ figure because we actually see him being called, but not by God. At one point, he is called by this guy who's a leader in Shechem, who sees this group of people that he wants destroyed, and that Abimelech also wants destroyed. And he calls Abimelech to come to Shechem, and he uses this phrase. He says, basically, do what your hand finds to do, which is a phrase that you'll see elsewhere in the Bible. Sometimes God says this as he's calling someone to do something for him. When he's calling someone to be a leader for him, he'll call them in that way sometimes. But now we see this happen with Abimelech being called not by God, but by an evil man. And so when we see that, we see he is, again, not a judge. Maybe we could call him a false judge. Another big character in the narrative of Judges, but not doing what's the goal of the judges, right? To judge God's enemies and save God's people. In fact, it's the other way around, where he's actually turning on God's own people, on people of Shechem and surrounding area, and destroying them instead. And so very different, but still in the same theme, in kind of a upside down kind of a role. So he does connect to Gideon, though, very clearly, him being Gideon's son. We actually see that this explains, this teases out what we saw at the end of the last chapter, where we saw in chapter 8, verse 33 through 35. As soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals and made Baal-berith their god. And the people of Israel did not remember Yahweh their God, who had delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. He had done good for Israel, and instead what they end up doing is they support Abimelech slaughtering almost 70 other members of Gideon's family. So, wiping people out. They're supportive of this evil guy destroying Gideon's family, despite all the good that he had done for them, despite all the good that Gideon had done for these people. So they even worship different god, Baal-berith. which means Lord of the Covenant. It's a false Lord of the Covenant, right? It's a false covenant. It's everything here is kind of an anti, or the anti is in place of. So there's this opposite kind of mirror mode going on here. So Gideon had said, follow Yahweh. Gideon had said his son is not going to rule. What happened? They did not follow Yahweh. They didn't follow Yahweh. They followed Baal. They did have his son rule. They put Abimelech in charge. And they murdered his family on top of all that. So then we get a prophecy that comes by the one son of Gideon who had escaped. And he comes back and prophesies about Abimelech and the people of Shechem who have kind of conspired together. That they're essentially going to kill each other. Saying that, talking about Abimelech as in this analogy of trees looking for a leader. They go to this tree, they go to that tree, they go to this vine, they go to all these different kind of nature analogies, and goes all the way down from these great trees all the way down to the bramble. What's a bramble? A bramble is like a blackberry bush with no blackberries. It's got just the bad parts of it. It's just the thorns. It's just a big thorn bush. So, that's, if you have seen a blackberry bush before, if you've picked blackberries before, you know all those thorns you got to watch out for. Just imagine you have one of those bushes, but none of the fruit that goes with it. None of the good part, all the bad. That's Abimelech right there. And that's the analogy you got. So, he is going to have fire come out of, or the bramble, will have fire come out of it and destroy around it, and what's represented, the trees that represent the people of Shechem, fire will come back and destroy the bramble. That's the prophecy. So, what happens? Well, eventually, when Abimelech is called, he's already slaughtered all these other people. He's called by this evil guy to come to Shechem and to attack these people. Well, so he goes there, and they all run into this tower. It's called like a tower, maybe like the temple of Baal-Berith, or El-Berith. It's actually, there's two different names, but probably the same thing. El means God, Baal means Lord, so Lord of the Covenant, God of the Covenant. And they try to seek refuge there with their false God, their false God of the Covenant. And he literally lights them on fire. Shuts up at the bottom, puts all these branches and stuff around from trees, right? And lights it on fire, and they all burn up and die. So that part of the prophecy happens. But then it's in there, because remember, he's also supposed to die in this prophecy. Well then, so he's destroyed them. He's got his vengeance on them, all that kind of stuff, and he's wrecking these people. He goes to maybe a kind of the outskirts of the town, maybe like a smaller town, that's kind of a satellite of the bigger place, maybe a neighboring town, wherever it is. He goes somewhere else. He's going to do the same thing. They run into a tower. They go up there. And he's going to destroy them. And then, in fact, he dies, actually. He's the one that dies this time. And so the prophecy is fulfilled. And in all this, though, in all this chaos and evil and awfulness and anti-Christness, we just see the gospel. And when you read through this, where do you see it? I challenge you to pause it, read chapter 9, look for it. Where do we see the gospel in this? And then come back and let's talk about it. And if you see any, besides what I'm about to tell you, if you see any other places, I'd love to see in the comments, where else do you see the gospel here? Gospel is all over the Bible. See what happens here? How does he die? How does Abimelech die? Well, let's look at that in chapter 9. You maybe you just read it. So they go shut themselves in on the roof of this tower. Chapter 9, verse 52. And Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it and drew near to the door of the tower to burn it with fire, right? Doing the same thing he did last time. And a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. Then he's very embarrassed. They didn't have a very high view of women at this time. And he tells, verse 54, tells the young man, his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest they say of me, a woman killed him." Now, of course, we all know, we see this anyways, a woman killed him. So his failure is complete. But what's the significance of this? Like, it's not just that a woman killed him. You see, we've already seen this same picture happen a few videos ago. We talked about Jael. Jael is this woman who this bad guy Sisera comes, enemy of God's people. She invites him into her tent, acts friendly to him, because her husband is illegitimately friendly with him. And so he comes in. She says, "Hey, you just go down, go to sleep. Don't worry about anything." Goes to sleep. Takes a tent peg right through his skull. Crushes his skull. And I said back in that video, what are we seeing? We are seeing in Genesis 3, there was this promise that the seed of the woman would crush the seed of the serpent. Right? You just go back to Genesis 3:15 to see this. This is promised almost the beginning of the Bible, just right after the fall, right after Adam and Eve sinned. Immediately after that, God promises that there will be a solution. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Right? Going to crush the head of the snake. And ultimately, that's Jesus. But we're seeing these little pictures that are pointing us forward to the greater example of it in Jesus. First, we saw it with Jael. Now we see it with this woman, who she, one of God's people, threw that millstone down, crushed his head. This enemy of God, this anti-judge, he is defeated. His head is crushed. And ultimately, it points us forward to the day when Jesus would come. And he would crush the ultimate enemy. And that's where we see the gospel in Judges 9. Really cool when we can see these moments. Things that at first glance maybe just seems like senseless brutality, but there's a message behind it. Abimelech, he was a false judge. He was an anti-Christ figure. He was the bramble, that blackberry bush that didn't have any blackberries. All the bad, none of the good. And God defeated him. And next time, we're going to move back into the true judges, the guys who point us forward themselves to Jesus. When we see these, what they call minor judges, just because we don't get a lot of information on them. We got Tola and Jair. Got them right after, in chapter 10. It says, "After Abimelech, there arose to save Israel Tola, the son of Puah, son of Dodo, a man of Issachar." Right, and then after him arose Jair the Gileadite, who judged Israel 22 years. And so we get a little bit more information on some other guys that God used. Doesn't go into the details, but we will get more details for the next guy, Jephthah, that we'll read about. See him next time. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.